Hey, Vinyl Community, Jeff here again. And I realized that I was doing the series on my top 10 albums from certain years, and it's been a while since I've done one. 1987 is where we got to. And so I had the list. Just a lot of things came up. So let's jump into that. I have the 10 that I pulled for this year, 1988. Now, and for those of you who maybe are joining us for the first time or don't know what I've been doing, it's 10 great albums currently in my vinyl collection, ranked somewhat to how I feel they are today. So, a couple of things. If you think there's an album I missed, how can you not have included that? Well, maybe it's just not high on my list, or maybe I don't have that on vinyl at this time. I still have a lot of holes in my collection, so it could be either of those. So this is 10 albums I currently have in my collection right now, ranked somewhat based on how I feel today, that are 10 great albums from 1988. So here, let's jump into this now. There were quite a few. It wasn't as bad as some of the years. I think, what was it, 84, 85, 86 had so many to choose from. Not as many to choose from, but some really great albums. 1988 was a good year, and there were a lot of great albums. So it was hard to, I really had to shuffle things around to come up with just 10. And then I had to take those 10 and shuffle them around. It was really hard to decide, and a lot of times I judge it based on not only what it meant to me at the time it came out, the impact it had, but also longevity, how it's impacted me or has gotten repeat plays, in the past 30 years. So some of these albums, I kept shifting them around and thinking, back when it first came out, I really didn't like it that much. But now, 30 years later, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, let's get right into this. Don't want to make this too terribly long. This one, first one, I put it number 10. It was hard to, I really wanted it higher. But in lieu of all the other ones that are in here, I shuffled them and got to this. Vengeance Rising, their first album, Human Sacrifice. At the time it came out, it was probably one of the heaviest albums in my collection. And it was a novelty in that sense because I wasn't really into extreme metal of the time, of much of any. And so this really kind of was a new thing, but it really, really resonated well with me. I had the original cassette single, all the songs made it to. Anyway, the album has just continued to be a favorite over the years. It's pretty extreme. It's nothing compared to modern music as far as the extremity of it. It's it's pretty rough vocally, but it's nothing like death metal or black metal or any of that now. So anyway, and this was recently reissued in the past couple years. Absolutely still just an amazing album for its rawness and its greatness. So ranking in number 10. This is one of the ones that fluctuated. Back when this came out, I really didn't like it. When I first heard it, I hated the production. I thought everything sounded weird. The drums were too separated. It just wasn't, I just didn't like it. I'm like, I really don't like that. Took a while, and of course, over time, I grew to love it more and more. And so that while it definitely deserves a place, I almost kind of knocked it off to 10, but then I'm like, no, it has become kind of a staple. It does have longevity. I still hear them on the radio, and I still love the album from that standpoint. So it did come in. It made it in at number 9, so had to include this classic from Metallica. Saint Too Late for Living. Now this, at the time it came out, blew me away and has longevity. I love this album still. This is they had an EP and an album, and this is their second album. Production got better on each one. The first album was more of a raw. The EP, the second album was really good, but still kind of raw. And then this is really polished in the sense of just the production, and the songwriting was very, very great. So I love this. This is a reissue, remastered. It came out a couple years ago. I have an original too, but anyway, it's still one of my favorites from 1988. This is one of the Christian metal releases, and this is really the year when a lot of Christian metal made the cut and was really coming into its own. And you'll see that here coming up, including this one, Bride, Live to Die. Another classic. This is the second Bride album, which I thought was a great improvement over the first. The first, to me, his vocal styles are different. And this one, he really kind of finds his groove, and from here on out, has just Dale Thompson became a powerhouse vocalist in these early years, and this is one of my favorite albums from that time frame. They had multiple at this point. I think they had like, well, 4 or 5 member band. They were, really solidifying as a, hard rock shredding entity. And at the time that this came out, I'd made friends with Troy, the guitar player from the band, and he used to send me a bunch of home movies of them in the studio and live stuff. And I've got tons of bootlegs that he had sent me. And so I saw a lot of the behind the scenes stuff in this era of the first and second album that was really great. So a lot of that sticks with me, just, the great stuff that came from that time frame. So yes, there you go at number 8. This is one that almost didn't make the list, and then I said, I kept going back and forth. I ended up bumping another album, surprisingly, and brought this in, and then I had to shuffle it around a little bit. Seventh Son of the Seventh Son by Iron Maiden. Yes, I know I screwed up and showed this at the wrong year when I really meant to show the other album. So it's going to still be on here. It's a classic, especially in light of the fact that recently I had to learn some songs from this album on drums for a concert that never took place. And so, it just brought back those memories of those time frames when I had to go back and revisit the songs in a learning capacity. So, Can I Play with Madness? We actually played that Saturday at my past gig. So I knew that one. And I think The Clairvoyant was on the list. But anyway, great stuff. Iron Maiden had to be on the list there. And at number 5, Barren Cross Atomic Opera, the second full-length album by Barren Cross. A lot of people compare Barren Cross vocalist Mike Lee to Bruce Dickinson, so it's kind of funny how it wasn't intentional that they ended up being side by side. But they do have a sort of a Iron Maiden flair, only in the sound of the vocals. Musically, it's not really quite the same. But this album is just amazing, amazing classic. The first album was great. This one was a tad greater. They just got better with each album that came out, and this one still near and dear to my heart. It was at the time this came out, it blew us away. It blew me away. It still has a high place on my list. So there you go, Barren Cross Atomic Opera at number 5. And at number 4, you got to have Operation Mindcrime, right? Now I admit when this first came out, I was kind of losing interest in Queensryche, only because I really dug the EP. I really kind of dug the first album. So they were becoming different, but it didn't take long. Listening to this a few times that I realized the masterpiece that it was, and it's of course probably in most people's minds their high watermark and a masterpiece altogether. And they've kept trying to go back and recapture the sound with Queensryche, the Operation Mindcrime 2, etc., etc. So, but yeah, it's a classic. It's a great album, so it had to make it in there. Number 4. Number 3, we get the Breakthrough album by Sacred Warrior. Some guys and I were talking the other day about some of Sacred Warrior's later stuff, and we were talking and comparing, the difference between the first and second album, production-wise, song-wise, and it just reminded me of just how great this album was when it came out. It just has very Queensryche, high vocals, soaring vocals. People compare him to Queensryche, Jeff Tate quite a bit. It's just melodic metal perfection. And when this album came out, it was the closest thing that I could find that was close to the original Queensryche sound that I was kind of itching for, not Operation Mindcrime, but more first EP type stuff. Love this album, and so it was recently reissued, so it may still be available. But anyway, if you don't have it, you should grab it. At number 2, what I consider just almost picture perfect melodic metal that not many people know about because it's more of an import. I think it has recently been reissued. Joshua recently remastered and reissued it on CD, I believe. But I had to order this back in the day from overseas. I remember when I got home from a trip and it was in the mail and I put it in, and ever since then I've loved it. Rob Rockland vocals, which of course we know him from Impellitteri. A lot of work with Impellitteri. He's done some solo work, but back in the day he was just getting onto his own. He was part of that Mars project with Tommy Aldridge and Rudy Sarzo and Tony McAlpine, and that was kind of where we got to know him. And then he kind of pops up on this. I didn't really know a whole lot about Joshua at the time, but this album was it's just a masterpiece. Of course, he went on to Like I say, he went on to do a lot of work with Impellitteri in the past couple decades. So the album, though, is just melodic metal perfection in my mind. Absolutely love it. Number two. Number one is the album that was so different, it blew me away, and have been a lifelong fan since then. Queensryche, Out of the Silent Planet. I don't know what you want to call it. Groove metal, groove rock. They were hard to classify. The record labels didn't even know what to do with them. Some people called them metal. Some people called them other things, you know. But the album, the lyrics, the songwriting, the depth of the lyrics, the interesting twist on some of the lyrics, just the overall groove. This was just the most impressive album for me at the time. Their second album, as impressive. The third album started sounding kind of weird to me. I love them all, but just looking at the sound progression, first and second album still, you know, hold the highest place. The third album I really love, but it was different. Fourth album kind of returns to original. You know, they've tinkered with their sound over the years, but this first album, I mean, it's just what it is. It is just one of the highest loves in my collection, but especially for 1988. Number one, there you go. What are your favorite albums from 1988? And let me know in the comments below, and I'll be back. Hopefully I won't take as long to get to 1989, and I'll see you later. Rock on and rock hard.